Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Therapist Take. We are going to talk about why we stopped using polygraphs when it comes to betrayal trauma recovery. So don't go anywhere. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Therapist Take. We are going to talk about betrayal trauma, but particularly we're going to talk about polygraphs and their function, their use, how people use them, how we used them, and then why we stopped using them. And so we're going to get into that. But before we do, just want to remind everybody to please subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to ring the bell so you can be notified when more videos like this are posted. Also, if you're listening to this on the podcast platform, please just stop what you're doing for a brief second. Go and give us a 5-star review and maybe even a comment if you have it in you to do that. And then head over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel there too, and help us please the algorithm so that we can get more content out to people. So that's the housekeeping thing. So hi, Carrie.
Hi, Josh.
Were you thinking that I forgot?
No, I was just waiting for it.
I did forget.
And you wouldn't forget me for too long.
No,
You'd be talking to yourself for
I forgot to do the hi, Carrie deal.
That's okay.
Like, crap.
You got the business stuff done.
Right, yeah, we got the housekeeping stuff out of the way.
That's good.
Right. So how have you been?
It's been a busy week.
All right. How do you feel about this topic, by the way?
I think it's an important one. I think people are very curious about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always a little bit reticent to take a stand on things. Because as therapists, what are we trained to do? See every angle of everything.
Pretty diplomatic, yeah.
And so I guess the stand in the sense that we've taken is we no longer incorporate them into our disclosure process, the polygraphs meaning. And so it's a stand. So I guess I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm glad we get a chance to talk about it.
Right, yeah. I mean, and we usually, I think we're pretty good have always talked about it when people have asked us, on why we have chosen not to do it, but I don't think we've ever really been hard on people who still choose to do it and find value in it.
I hope not.
Right, because one thing we've always said about our model and how our treatment model and how we do things here is that it's just a way, not the way.
We do
right,
say
and I think it's the same thing with this. But when you think back on our days of using the polygraph, does that not generate some anxiety?
Yes. Does it for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit, which is probably why, again, getting into why we stopped using it.
Yeah, I think, sure.
Yeah.
Our anxiety wasn't just about, oh my gosh, this is anxiety provoking for the client. It was also probably reflecting our distress about it.
Right.
Them being part of our treatment model too,
Yeah.
right?
And it's, we gave it a good shot. And
We did. We did.
I'm a big believer, if you can't get behind something, when you're giving something a shot and you're paying attention to how your mind and your body's reacting, and if you can't get behind it, you're probably going to have to abandon it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the main reason why I never spanked my kids, is because I knew I would not be able to do it without feeling guilty.
Yeah.
And I just don't believe that a parent should be utilizing a discipline measure that results in the parent feeling guilty about it later.
Use that a lot as a choice in parenting of if I'm going to feel crummy about it, I just don't think it's worth that.
Right. Topic for a different day.
Totally.
There's a lot of other good reasons to not do that, but again, we can dive into that a different day. Well, before we dive into more of this discussion, let me just give a brief episode breakdown for everybody, so you know where we're headed with this. Let me get my trusty notes out here that I made. So we're going to begin just by talking about polygraphs and disclosures in general, kind of how polygraphs are traditionally used, at least as far as what we know about in the world of betrayal trauma treatment. Then we'll move into talking about the perceived benefits in that. So, what other people are saying on why they use it, and then maybe even some of the benefits that we saw when we used them. Right. And then we will move into talking about why we stopped, which is kind of the conversation we were having just now. And then the last thing is just a discussion about, can we see a place for polygraphs? Even in our practice someday, is there is there a possibility for that? So and then something I want to mention to everybody who's listening is that we already have on the calendar. He just actually emailed me to reschedule, and I think we're settling on December. I'm sorry, not December, January 17th, I believe. David Otwell, who is our old polygraph examiner, who I still think is a fantabulous person and really good at his job. He was really kind and gentle to our clients.
He was.
I asked him to go ahead and if he would come on. So the idea is that I want him to listen to this episode, to how we talk about it. I want him to kind of lay the groundwork and then come on our show and talk about polygraphs from his point of view as somebody who obviously truly believes in them, because
Sure,
it's basically his business.
Right.
But he also, I believe, has done several polygraphs working with couples where there has been betrayal trauma. So just want to kind of get his take, and
Yeah.
he knows that world
Right.
a lot better than we do, and he's very confident in their usage, and so.
Yeah, I think it's good just to give all the information.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also like, if you, between now and January 20th or 17th, if you have questions that you want us to ask David, feel free to submit those either in the comments of the video, or if you have access to our emails. Our website is familysolutionsok.com. You can submit them there if you want to. So, yep. All right. Well, let's dive into this. So, polygraphs and disclosures. Let's start with just a discussion about where polygraphs are typically used in betrayal trauma treatment.
Yeah. Well, first you have to just put out there. I would ask people, and I do this with my clients, just in general, when you say the word polygraph, what comes to mind?
It's a good way to start. I agree.
It feels
Yeah,
criminal.
Criminal, yeah.
Yeah, it feels that there's some already level of accusation of guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're having to really climb a mountain
Right.
to prove innocence, right? And so I think part of the reason that we're talking about this today, and part of the reason, I know for me and I believe for you, that we have moved away from using them as part of our process is perhaps because of that imagery, right? And other things. But I do think it's just important, and I have my clients talk about this. We need to just kind of talk about that. And even what you've seen in pop culture and examples of people taking a polygraph, right? And so I think that's one. But I think that the question of how they're used in betrayal trauma recovery or in addiction treatment has been a piece of trying to build transparency after there have been secrets, right? And so from the other trained therapists and mental health professionals that we've worked with, that are other either therapists or psychologists, et cetera, they use polygraph as part of the recovery plan for couples that are working to stay in the relationship, recover the relationship.
Right.
And the polygraph is a piece of information that helps both partners feel confident that best efforts towards truth were made.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. We're going to get into the criminal thing because as we talk about, when we get into why we stopped, because that's definitely going to come back up on some of the prep work that we have to do with clients, because there's just no way around it when they start hooking you up to this machine, right?
Yes, right.
But yes, in our field, in the betrayal trauma recovery, when people are when people have experienced betrayal to this degree, where it's usually some kind of chronic infidelity, whether it's sex addiction or just someone being sexually compulsive, the lies, the deception are deep and painful.
Yes.
And I can't say that I wouldn't want to do the same thing. And so I would never fault a partner. If you're listening to this, don't think for a second that if you're asking us if we do polygraphs, we're going to tell you we don't do them, but we'd be happy to give you a referral to somebody that does do them, if that's what you want, And so it's just not part of our model anymore because we couldn't confidently do it, which jumping points here. So yeah, so I think, the person I want to bring up is Milton Magnus,
Okay,
because he's like the guru, at least in our field, in terms of someone who has really, um, really made it not just, it's a very big part of his model, I believe. In the polygraph exams are not only done for as part of couple recovery, but part of the sex addicts individual recovery,
Yes.
where they have to sit for polygraphs pretty regularly.
As part of their
Right.
commitment to recovery. Yes.
And one of the things that Milton said, and it's quoted in his book, if we maybe put that book up on the screen, it's called Stop Sex Addiction. And he's got a great section in this book about the polygraphs. He has an interview with his polygraph examiner. Yep. In the book, and so you can kind of get his perspective on it. And there's a lot of great information in this book. I've recommended this book a lot, even though we don't use the polygraph anymore. But one of the things that he said that I have it right here on our phone. I found our card that we used to give when we were doing polygraphs, and he says a disclosure that is less than 100% honest is not a disclosure, but a deception, right? Mm-hmm. And so that you can kind of see that, if you have a device, you can understand the logic there, the technology that actually can tell with some level of accuracy. It's more accurate than not, if you think about it. Like, even in the least accurate
correct.
part of it, it's, there are ways that we'll talk about in a minute where you can make polygraphs, they get less and less accurate. But even at the least, it's still more accurate. You're still over 50%, basically. And so if you have that type of technology, why not use it to help, give hurting people confidence that they know everything now. That the lies have been divulged, that there are no more lies.
Sure.
But I also think the reality is like what he is saying, 100% honesty. I've met Milton Magnus one time, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I don't think he is saying that there is such a thing as 100% honesty. He's using the number like we would use it in its extreme form to say, all the way, but, one thing I talk about all the time is that the person who was acting out, the person who was cheating or being unfaithful, they will forever and always know more.
Yes.
Because they were there, and so is that being dishonest or deceptive? No. And so in that sense, I think you can have 100% honesty, and you just kind of got to rethink what honesty means. Because if you think it means that I have to divulge every piece of information, every detail, then that would never happen.
Well, and the memory just doesn't work like that.
Right. Memories are going to change.
Yeah,
right.
It's just, they're still subjective.
How things happen and how somebody remembers it are always going to be different, right?
Right.
So, but in the spirit of being 100% honest and the way that we're talking about it, there's some people have found a lot of value in using this device that can help with that, and that's the key word there, to assist, to aid, to help. But I think sometimes it becomes the thing, like that everything rests on. And that's one of the problems I have with it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where, once we started really digging into that,
right,
we couldn't just rest.
Right, exactly, yeah. But, we definitely had, we saw the logic in it. That's why we wanted to try it.
And we were trained to how to use it. You have to. I mean, let's just be honest, right? I mean, part of our training was, hey, this is how disclosures work. Here's where you do polygraph. Here's how.
Right.
Right. So it's not some foreign concept that we just pulled out of the air. We were trained, and we're not the only people who don't use them as part of the disclosure. But I also think we were doing what we were trained to do.
And just in case people don't know what we mean by disclosure, do you think we can cover that just a second? So There's this service that we offer. A lot of CSATs do this. These are certified sex addiction therapists. Or it's kind of now shifting into the terminology of saying betrayal trauma therapy. So that's called a therapeutic disclosure. And so what happens a lot of times is that, or probably 100% of the time, by the time people get to us, there's already been a disclosure.
Sure, right.
So somebody has found out, about this secretive sexual behavior, whether it's addiction, compulsive behavior, or an emotional affair, or there's also financial infidelity where there's hiding money and things like that. And and then what happens a lot of times, they, of course, the partner who's been betrayed, they want to know.
Yes.
What else have you not told me? And so, but then the person who was unfaithful, they start giving information in doses. They start telling the truth in doses, and that is what we call staggered disclosure, or we call it trickle down truthonomics, which I love our new term for that. And so it comes in these doses, and that usually proves to be more harmful than helpful.
Staggered disclosure is very painful, right? It's the idea of getting cut with a jagged, dull knife, right?
So if we can kind of, put it really is like putting a Band-Aid on for a minute to kind of stop the bleeding. Like, can we hold off on any more disclosure and convince the couple to do this therapeutic disclosure, where we go through this whole process of preparing the disclosure statement, there's partner prep, and it's a long process. In some ways we have to rush it sometimes, and where we do it therapeutically, where they will sit in a room with us, and then the person who is unfaithful will disclose everything.
Read their statement that discloses everything. Right.
And we have, if you go to our website, which is familysolutions.ok.com, you can check in the services section there, where there's a betrayal trauma drop down. There's a menu that says services, then you go to betrayal trauma, and then you'll see the therapeutic disclosure service, and there's a link to a YouTube video that we did there. I'll try to link it. I'll put these links in the description and in the show notes, so that you can have the blog that we wrote, and you can have the YouTube video. I did go back and watch that YouTube video, and it's kind of brutal. Like, we're gonna have to redo it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
But don't link it until we redo it.
We'll link it for now. But once I redo it, because it's all we got right now. So, but it's the music in the background. It's just like, it was like, gosh, I can't. Why did I do that? And I thought, back when we made that, I thought, this is so good. Definitely gotten better.
Taste change.
Right. So and kind of what's reflected on our little rack card that we have here, little brochure type thing. There's a process that we would do if couples wanted to use the polygraph to do disclosure or not use it. And so kind of the people that use the polygraph and disclosure, what they're doing is they're having their couples go through this disclosure process that we just described, and then sit for a polygraph, or they write the disclosure, sit for the polygraph, and then the unfaithful partner will disclose after they pass the polygraph. There's a lot of different ways that you can mix and match it to incorporate that polygraph in. And but they are taking a polygraph on the written disclosure, the written statement, which I think is better than doing a verbal one, because it's so much ambiguity going up in your brain. And so to have something written and do it on this information, I think maybe helps the brain a little bit.
I think so too. Yeah. And I think it helps both people.
Right.
Yeah.
So that I just wanted to kind of give, just in case you weren't, you don't have an understanding of what a disclosure is and how a polygraph is used. That's typically how it's used for people that still use them, and there are still a lot of people that do.
Yeah, there are.
Right. So before we dive more into why we don't use them, let's talk about some of the benefits that at least we hear people say, and then maybe some of the benefits that we experienced.
Well, I think that what you'll hear most people say that use them or are planning to use them is it's just one more tool, right? It's just one more, in a sense, catch-all, right? I think that I've gotten the truth. This is from the partner's language. I think I've gotten the truth. Remember, again, let me just reiterate before we continue. This is done for people that are wanting to reconcile the relationship and stay
Right.
together, right? So, partner saying, we're working hard, I'm seeing changes, we're working on this disclosure statement. The polygraph is just another piece so that I know, right, that I got the truth, right? Or I got a better likelihood that I got the truth, right? It's another thing, too, I'll hear from partners that it's something that gives them peace of mind because they can say and have it in their plan to the acting out partner, like, you're going to have this thing, right? That not only is it going to be the disclosure statement that you write that you have to look at me and share if you're keeping something, but then you have this other technological device that will reveal if you're keeping things, right?
Right.
So it's got some gatekeeping
Yeah.
almost function, right,
Yeah.
for people.
I was actually talking to a therapist not too long ago that still uses the polygraph, and she was just curious as to why I don't, and because we had a mutual client, we were going to do a disclosure, things like that, and together, and so when you're working, outside of the realm, you make adjustments, and I didn't have a problem with that if that's what she wanted to do. If that's how. Usually, I defer to the partner's
Yes.
therapist, right?
Right.
So, and so she was just curious as to why we don't. And we were talking about it, and she said like one of the things that she has found beneficial to in her practice is, how many times that the client, the one who is unfaithful, right before they're about to take the polygraph, you know, it says, "Oh, I remembered something," and then has to go back and disclose, and then go and take and so that they can, take the polygraph and pass.
Be clean, yeah.
So, there's that accountability measure of like I am, up against technology, and I think most people, that understand polygraphs to some degree know that they're not going to be able to breathe their way through it or trick it or do the George Costanza,
I was thinking that.
thing where he said, how do you say it?
It's
Hey, by the
not
way, you got the quote right last week.
I did get it
I
right.
checked it out. Yeah, I went and
Oh,
looked it up,
wow.
and you got it right.
So
You
I'll
nailed
probably
it.
get this one wrong then,
Still
for sure.
Magnolia's quote from our last episode.
Oh, yeah.
Carrie
Well,
quoted.
I'm pretty sure what George says, George Costanza from Seinfeld says, it's not a lie if you believe it,
Yeah, yeah.
right? When he's trying to trick the polygraph.
Yeah. It's not,
Yeah.
the timing on it was.
Oh, it's
It's
beautiful.
not a lie if you
If
believe
you believe
it.
it. Just remember. Yeah. Yeah.
We'll just go look that one up, and it says.
Oh, I
there's
know.
nothing like that, right?
That's why I
Like,
prefaced it with, then I'll get this one wrong.
we had that happen once, and so that's why we
And
we
we've
always laugh
laughed and
about
laughed
it.
about
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
We were so convinced about that
We were
Willy
so
Wonka.
convinced.
So
Oh,
both of
boy.
us.
I know.
I
That's
know.
what's terrible.
That goes back to memory, right?
know.
I know what we're
Yes,
talking
it
about.
does.
That was our memory episode.
Yeah.
So okay. So here's the problem I have with that. So that happens. That's happened with us,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
When we're in the handful of polygraphs that we did before we decided not to do them anymore, we definitely had people that were like, "Oh, there's something I remembered," all right? But the problem I have with that is, and again, we don't have an extensive portfolio of clients that we've taken through this process. We quit doing it fairly quickly after
Yeah.
we started, right?
Yeah.
So this is just anecdotal, and so I don't want to. I just want to make that disclaimer.
Yeah.
But kind of what I perceive to be wrong with that is that one, the clients that we had do that, like there was the things that they remembered were just kind of detail oriented things. It wasn't like, there was a whole other affair I
Right.
remembered. I intentionally was keeping secret and I remembered it right before.
Right.
It's usually some detail, and they're usually worried that this could go either way, but I better just go ahead and disclose it just in case.
Yeah.
And this is some of the problem I have with it is because it's so anxiety
Yes.
ridden,
Yes.
and like I don't know, should I tell them that I spent $10 on this morning I went to McDonald's and got a breakfast for $10, and I didn't tell them, and maybe I should go back and tell them. That's the type of thing that we would experience happen. And sometimes they were related to an event they disclosed about, but they said, well, maybe I should go ahead and tell them this one detail, because, they don't want to fail the polygraph.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but the other thing too is what kind of it's a perceived deception too when they do remember those things. And you know how I love Malcolm Gladwell and his revisionist history podcast. Yes. But he did an entire episode where he talks about procrastination, and I think it was on the memory episodes, were some of my favorite episodes.
The memory episodes are amazing.
Right. Yeah. And he talks about that how the way the brain works with procrastination is that the brain's kind of forced into its creative self. Yes. Right. And that's where all these types of things are stored. And it's like you finally can think, you come up with ideas at the last minute. Mm-hmm. Martin Luther King Jr. rewrote his famous speech like at 3 a.m. or something like that. And there's a lot of people that did some amazing things at the last minute, right? Mm-hmm. And so, when you're down to the wire, this phenomenon can happen, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's not because I would venture to say that we would be. I'd be remiss to say it's because of deception that's happening. It's more of like, I remembered something, but from my experience, it wasn't ever anything of significance. Mm-hmm. It was just out of fear. I remembered something. Maybe I should go disclose it just in case. I don't want this thing to read me as being deceptive.
Deceptive, right. And I think we should say that the outcomes of the polygraph are, what you can get are 3 different outcomes, right?
Right.
You can pass, which means no deception detected, mm-hmm. right? You can get inconclusive, which is just what that means. Mm-hmm. And then you can get fail, which means detected.
Deception detected,
yeah. So when we talk about this, really, people are trying to add that stuff in because they don't want something inconclusive. They don't want that detail to then make them unsure, so then their answer kind of mm-hmm. codes as deceptive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and when we have the polygraph examiner on.
Yeah, he'll talk more about this, obviously.
Yeah,
but I just thought we should kind of give people that's.
Right, and we kind of changed our model a little bit as we went along. Like, it wasn't like we didn't do any. We did do several of these polygraphs, but and we polished it as we went and what worked for us. And one thing that we realized is when we understood how the exam was working with these 3 things, is that you could score, you could pass 2 questions and fail and get an inconclusive on the 3rd, and technically, it's technically ruled an inconclusive. In a court of law, that's an inconclusive. Yeah. If you passed on 2 and failed on the 3rd, that is technically a fail. Mm-hmm. And so what we decided to do was saying all we're trying to use polygraph for in how we were doing it is to rule out deception detected. Yes. Right? So, so if somebody passes 2 questions, gets an inconclusive on the 3rd, our result is, and when we inform the client, the partner, is that no deception was detected. Now, we're not going to keep secrets and let them know that. Right. Oh, we're not going to tell them. We're not going to withhold the reality that on one of the questions there was an inconclusive. We're going to tell them that they passed 2 and had an inconclusive on the 3rd, which means no deception was detected. Right. Right. And from my understanding and what I remember from conversations with David, who's going to come on the show, is that he's really confident that if there is deception, this machine will pick it up. Mm-hmm. And so that gave me more confidence in our approach to use. We're just trying to rule out deception. That's right. No deception detected. That's good enough for us.
That's what we're wanting.
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah. but why was it inconclusive? Well, we can work on that, figure that out, and maybe if they want them to sit for another polygraph, then we can do that. Which we had that happen. We've had that happen too.
Yes, we did. Yep.
So.
So any other ways that you've seen people use it?
Just let me save it for the last question on how we can incorporate it back in, because there is a way that I have considered wanting to put it back into play, and and since that's our last point, we'll talk about that. Let's dive into why we stopped using it.
Okay.
If people don't already have a good idea. Right.
I know. I think it's been peppered in our answers already.
One thing to go back to on something you said, and I don't know if you've had this experience or not. I think you're aware of this, that there are, though, a lot of therapists, even in our field of betrayal trauma, that see things a little bit differently in terms of what the partners are owed, despite whether or not they're staying together.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
I've heard and read, yeah.
Right. I don't think it's a super large group. I think, and I don't know for sure. I haven't ever polled anybody, but from my experience and anecdotally, it seems like more people are more aligned with us on like that. These disclosures, polygraph exams, if you're going to use them, like it's all about. It's to help the couple that wants to try to heal and reconcile, not to, appease the partner who has decided that she or he wants to leave, but deserves to know what happened, and it's in this way.
Yeah, because I think that the idea is you're trying to not make polygraph punitive.
Right.
I mean,
right.
I think to some degree that it is, because just in general, like.
Sorry, yeah.
Again, why we're here a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the segue into your question is that I know that for you and I know for me, it is incredibly important that the work that we're doing is not about punishment. It is not about someone being right or wrong. It is not about someone being good and someone being bad, because that creates a binary, right? And that's just not how we're trained. It's not how we believe. That's not how we help people.
Right.
And you can't, having someone take a polygraph because they've, violated somebody's trust so deeply and, extravagantly that they're having to use this very extreme tool. I mean, it has that nature to it, right? And it just does. It's inherent. And I think that punishment angle is something that you and I couldn't get behind. And I think that's also why most people use them for couples that are, wanting to recover and stay together, and not, oh, you've been wronged and you're owed the truth. And so that person must, sit down for this thing. And then you can, if they pass or don't, you can decide what to do and you could use it against them. Right. And we really, really, really don't want to be a part of that.
Right. Yeah. And let me just say to the partners that are listening to this that you have every right to feel that way.
Sure.
Like I again, like, there are a lot. It's not unreasonable to think that somebody who discovers betrayal like this isn't going to feel like retribution should happen here.
Sure.
But one thing that I've said for a long time is like, if I found out my partner cheated on me, somebody better nail me to the floor, because I'm going to go have some fun. I hope somebody would nail me to the floor. That's what we're here for, is to help nail people to the floor so they don't act on these feelings of retribution.
These impulsive feelings.
Right. So they're very common, and we're not faulting anybody for having them. And I can't say that I myself wouldn't feel exactly the same way, even if I decided to leave my partner, that I deserve to know everything. Right.
And I do think, and I say this a lot, we do deserve to know what's happened in our life, right? I think that how we have answered that is through our therapeutic process, right?
Sure.
That's how we've
100%.
risen to that challenge.
Yeah. So when it comes to why we stopped, so I don't know about you. I think I know, but just in case my memory doesn't serve me well, I'll just kind of state it like that, or I'll speak for myself here. as we went along this process, this journey of polygraphs, I got more and more like uneasy about it, right? And as I started learning more about, and so I started asking questions about. I remember even taking David to lunch one time,
I
so he
know.
just educate me a little bit
Yeah,
more.
with notes.
Right? It's
Yeah.
like maybe that would, why do I feel unsettled by it? And I think there are a lot of reasons. Um, I don't know if we should start with the primary because I think you and I are in agreement on the primary, but let's talk about some of these smaller reasons and then kind
We
of talk.
just did the punishment piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else?
Well, and uh, the thing that comes to people's mind the most is going to be the reliability factor, right? Which is a reason.
It
It's
is a
one of the
reason.
reasons. I am not going to lie. That is,
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Sorry.
Well done.
That was unintentional pun, but I like it.
I like it too.
All right. So yeah, you know, it's the from my understanding, the best polygraphs that are done or I don't know what they call them. I call them single question polygraphs. So there's obviously a number of questions they ask to create the like control questions,
Baseline.
right?
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, like we would have to prepare 3 questions for the polygraph examiner, and he would rework them because there's a certain way they have to ask. Right.
Them. Right.
But with every question you add, it lowers reliability. So if you want to keep the reliability, from my understanding, in the 95 percentile range, it's single question. And I did a training recently on disclosures where the people that were training actually do polygraphs, and they do single question polygraph. It's some version of basically, when it comes to your disclosure, everything that you wrote, everything you disclosed, is it accurate and true to the best of your knowledge?
Yep.
But some people want to know just you know specifics, like
Confirmation on
is there
specifics,
were
yeah.
there any other partners, and so these second and third questions
That's right.
get thrown in there, and sometimes
That's
4.
right. And sometimes, yeah.
Right, and when that happens, from my understanding, the reliability will start dropping down into like the 80s, the lower 80s, even at that. And that's just like I know it still makes it highly reliable.
Sure.
Like if you're
Sure.
telling me if I was playing the stock market or something, or like there's 80% chance that this thing's going to do. I'm like, well,
That's good.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to put my entire
Right. All your
portfolio
pennies,
into
right.
it, but I might put some money in that,
Sure.
But when it comes to relationships, are just different, man. Because and I think that's one of the keys is that so much weight was getting put
I know.
on this event, on this
Yes.
report.
Yes. Yes.
And it just didn't sit well with me. I don't know.
We tried to break down that's part of the reason we started researching. How many questions, and is asking summary questions better or specific questions? Like, we really did, and trying to figure out
Yeah.
because, the reliability, goodness gracious, I think that's probably the biggest
Yeah.
reason that we
Yeah.
we stopped doing it. And
And
it's not obviously the only, but it's probably the biggest, the most
Yeah,
substantial.
and it wasn't. I think we did a few polygraphs after I even had that meeting with
Yes,
David,
as I
because
recall.
David has so. And I can't wait for you guys to hear him talk about it, because he like he doesn't have a problem with it, right? I mean, and so I was
Right.
kind of banking off his confidence. Well, he is really confident in this thing, like
Sure.
and. So I was like, well, let's keep going and
Yeah.
let's see, and I just couldn't get there, and maybe maybe I needed more experience or more some specific training. I don't know. I just couldn't
maybe.
get there, and you couldn't
Right.
either,
Right.
right? And so
So another thing about it too, to kind of why it's the reliability, but are you ready for another one? 'Cause
yes,
this
go
is-
ahead. Let's
okay,
go.
This is how we, many of a disclosure afterwards, when the polygraph was included, it was anticlimactic.
Right.
You remember? Do you
Yeah.
remember that feeling? Do you remember being in the space with our clients, and there's this intense, emotional, heightened experience when the person is reading their disclosure statement, right? And this partner has the freedom to ask all the questions, and there's all this emotion, and there's this both grieving and release of the grief, and then there's I'm trying to be smart, making sure that I'm not getting duped on the partner's part, and there's this relief that the secret keeper has to be telling him. And then you go do the polygraph.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's confirmed, everyone's like, okay, good. But if it's inconclusive or you fail, it's what?
Bad.
It's bad.
Right.
And in the cases where most people pass, which was most of our experience, I think.
Yeah. And I think we got everybody there. I think, and maybe one.
Maybe one we didn't, but it didn't it wasn't the joy that I think if people were going to draw on a chart how they expected the disclosure experience to go, it was read the statement, feel sad, but feel like we're making an effort. We find out there's no lies, and our mood goes up, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't.
So it's interesting. I feel like I'm learning a little bit more about you right now. I didn't know that it was that piece that really bothered you a lot. Because it's a little bit different for me. It's the same to me. This point that you're making is the main reason we stop. But under a subheading of that it looks like it's a little bit different for me.
Okay.
But it's still the same point. And for me, it's the other way that bothered me. That part didn't. That they weren't ecstatic. They weren't relieved. It didn't bother me so much because I do kind of feel like disclosures are like that anyways. Right. So. It was the not believing it when they pass. Like they believe it hands down when they fail or they get inconclusive. Well, I figured, but when they pass with no inconclusives, yeah. They partners still have a hard time believing it's true.
Because the line is what? You always say it.
The line is
the partners are thinking.
Oh, the line. I thought you were setting a boundary.
Oh,
with me.
no. So what we talked about over and over.
Yeah. Because if anybody can trick this thing, it's that person. That's what I always say.
Her or him. Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody can, and they've said that to us, because if anybody can fool that polygraph, it's this person. It's my partner, because that's how fooled they feel.
That's right.
And how tricked they feel, and how. And so again, for us, when we were rethinking how our model works, and it really kind of put us on the spot to really think how our relationship's going to work when not even this machine can convince people that this person is not lying at minimum versus telling the truth. And we started to rethink, and we came up with transitional distrust, right? Which I think I already have that linked for people. They can read about this concept we came up with, where we were thinking about like this: if people are going to stay together and they're going to rebuild, it will be completely new. You don't need polygraph. You just don't. You don't need it because you're done with that relationship anyways. Yeah. It's done. Yeah. It's dead in the water. And we have to help couples rebuild this new relationship with this person that wears the skin of somebody who deceived me once in my life, in another lifetime. Yeah. And we could go on and on about that. We actually we wrote a blog about transitional distrust. We've done a YouTube video. I think we even did a podcast on it. I'll try to make sure I link all of that in the description and in the show notes, because when people ask me how do we get there, like this is how. And when I talk about I'll often tell couples like your marriage died that day, your couple relationship died that day, and I'm not using a metaphor. They don't quite understand that until they get further along in the process. We take them, and then it hits them. And the grief, and I'm like, I'll often say, does it feel like your body's trying to grieve? What's it grieving? Yeah. Because it knows something you're quite not aware of yet.
Yeah, the consciousness of it. Yeah.
So, it's tough. It's tough stuff. So that's the main reason. I think another reason it goes back to something we mentioned already, which is just kind of our brains have assigned a meaning to polygraphs that you just can't get around. And so you can spend time working with somebody saying, look, they're going to hook you up. They're going to put a little thing on your finger. It's just like you see in the movies right before they shine a big bright light in your face and start interrogating you.
Right.
You know, and again, David, who is former law enforcement, was always super respectful and gentle,
Yes, he was.
non-judgmental with
Right.
our clients.
Right.
Very, very good.
Collaborative.
Yeah. But man, when you start hooking somebody up,
I know.
it just like triggers a shame.
Yes.
And I'm like that. They're already feeling pretty darn rotten.
Yep, they are.
And now I feel like a criminal.
Yeah.
You know, type thing.
Yeah.
And again, not saying that it shouldn't be done, and not saying that doesn't give you opportunity to
No.
work on shame reduction.
Absolutely.
But
Right.
it's just another reason that
For us.
And then of course, then you can. Those just weren't the main reasons.
No.
That one
But they're
would,
pieces of
right?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to mention it's expensive. You know, at the same
Yes.
time. So.
Yes, I know. Well, the point of this is that this is the perspective that we've taken, and we wanted to share it because we want people to transparency. But I also think that what's happening too, Josh, is that whenever you come to a therapist, you're going to get them as people, not just their training, not just the letters after their name. You're still going to get who they are, and it was something that, as of recently and as of now, it's just not something that we want to do in our healing practice, right? And so the things that we brought up as reasons are just ours. They're just ours, right? And so I think I just kind of want to own that this is
Yeah, I appreciate you saying
perspective
that,
of
and
us.
and I hope people, any other professionals out there, hear that too. That might be listening to this. That, as Carrie said, it just didn't fit within our model,
Right.
You know, and I feel like we've done okay with couples that we've worked through our process and have not used the polygraph, but some
Right.
still will. They'll
We
use
just
it on
do-
their own.
Well, I was going to say, and I think we should answer that. If clients want to use that, what we do is we try to give them recommendations to high quality,
Yeah,
professionals.
I give David's number
And-
out all the time.
Right, and how
Yeah.
to use it in a way that research shows is most effective. Like you were talking
Yeah.
about the number of questions, the timing of it, making sure that it's referencing the written document rather than some just amalgamous, yeah, I promise I've told you the
Right.
truth, right? And then we incorporate that into the care and the work that we do, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not, you can't, as a therapist, as we started off today, you have to be very able to see all different perspectives, right? And utilize that.
Right.
So if that's something that my clients are using, then I'll help them with it, right? Just not bringing them into our office and we're not doing it as part of our process like we
Right.
used to.
Right. Do you want to know where I see a potential for it maybe in our
Yes,
practice
sure.
someday, possibly? At least when I've entertained the idea of incorporating it back in,
Okay.
this is where I've seen it. And it's in the individual recovery realm.
Okay. A certain
And
Milton Magnus.
it's very Milton Magnus-y, just based on that quote, and not really involving the partners much with it. That's probably why I haven't really pursued it much, because that part gets a little more complicated. But when he said I think it was Milton Magnus that also said, some of the biggest lies addicts tell are the ones they tell themselves.
Yes.
Right, and that really resonated with me. I was like, now that's a place that I could use a polygraph. As we're doing treatment and recovery, it's like, look, how many times has someone come into you and said, "I'm sorry I lied to you, Carrie," and I'm like, you don't have to be sorry. Like like it's not me
You didn't violate
that you're
right.
affecting.
You
Right.
violated
It's
your
you.
own-
Like
yeah.
you need to tell the truth for your benefit.
Well, yeah.
And so this kind of can hold them accountable to
Yeah.
that, and if they fail or get an inconclusive or something, like there's nobody that this is for but me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so they
Here's
can
the work to do.
exactly, and so I think I could someday maybe work it in there.
I
if
think
wanted
that
to.
model makes
Yeah.
sense too. I mean, Milton Magnus in his practice talks about that. He calls polygraphs the urine analysis
Yeah.
of sex addiction recovery, right?
Yeah.
Because in substance recovery, you do a UA
Yeah.
all the time to check that you're sober,
You're right.
right? So
But that's pretty darn accurate, isn't it?
what?
The UAs.
Yeah, They're more accurate.
99 something
If
probably.
yeah, I mean, people try to cheat it, obviously. But yeah, the real deal
Yeah.
is accurate. Yeah, no, so it's not comparable. I think he's
Yeah.
being bold when he tries to give these. He's trying to be,
Well, I mean, it's the
illustrating.
closest we got, right?
It's the closest
Yeah.
we got, but I can see the
So,
value in it. And I think,
yeah.
though, again, I hear what you're saying. And then it'll come back to why this is hard is because we are couples therapists and systemic therapists
Yeah,
at heart. So
right,
it'd be
right.
hard to just not, well, what do we do with the partner when we're doing? Oh, well, here we
Yeah.
go. And here comes us having to think that
Well,
through
yeah.
again.
If you're or most of the people that are working on sex addiction or sexually compulsive behavior, uh, very rarely are they single individuals. And if they are, it's because the person left, or if for example, porn addicts that I've had come in, they're realizing that they don't have relationships because of this habit. So it's still
Right.
relational oriented.
Yes, it
But
is.
most of them have partners, and I'm going to ask them to go sit for a polygraph, and they're not going to tell their
I know.
partner.
It feels, do you hear how goofy that
Right,
sounds?
that
Yeah.
sounds ridiculous. So yeah,
Yeah.
they're going to have to tell their partner, and then their partner's going to want to know the results.
Then it's going to
Right. So
impact their, yeah.
that's the complicated piece of it. That
Yeah.
one day maybe if we're ready to tackle it, we can do that. But I think the model we have works pretty well.
Well, again,
for
and
the
if
most
people
part.
are using those for their own individual recovery, they're doing it outside of here, but we're still going to be making it part of our treatment,
Right.
just like we do with all clients' habits and beliefs, et cetera, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I hope that clears it all up for everybody. It's the first
Clear.
time that I think we've really kind of organized our thoughts on it.
Well, I
mean,
don't
we've
know.
talked about it.
We've done it with clients.
Yeah, we have. Yeah,
We've done it in our
we
treatment
have.
planning sessions.
I think that's why
several
it's so easy to talk about because we've talked about it
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
I just don't think I've ever written it down in any capacity where
Right.
we.
Or kind of, it feels like it is known,
Yeah.
speaking it on this platform.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it is. But I hope everybody will come back and stay tuned for when David comes. I think again, I want to say it's January 17th that we are scheduled to do this, where he will join us, and there even might be a third part where I would like to bring in a therapist that. Still uses
Regularly
polygraphs,
uses
yeah,
them.
because I just want everybody to get kind of well-rounded
Yeah, we want
perspective.
informed.
Yeah,
Yes, we want
and it goes back to what I said is what we say always, that our way is a way, not the way.
Right.
It's just a way, and we feel like it works fairly well. But there's a lot of people's ways that work
Yes.
too,
Yeah,
and you just
thank
got to find the
goodness.
flavor that fits best
That's
for
right.
you.
That's right.
And if we could put that question on screen too that I have there, just like if and what it says for those of you that are listening, like if I'm just curious to hear from the audience on kind of like what your feelings are about polygraphs. If you think they're useful in any ways or any way. Sorry, I don't know why I said any ways, but if you feel like they're useful in any way or you see value in them, just feel free to comment, let us know, and then of course, if you have questions for David as we bring him on, feel free to ask those too. I'll try to make an Instagram post about that too to see if we can generate some questions for him.
Okay, good. Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and Carrie, thanks for being here.
You remembered I'm here.
Yeah, I did. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time.